Hello and welcome everybody to the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. I'm Josh Roller, and joining me on the other end of this Discord and Skype call session is Rob Peeters. What a weekend it was, Rob. I think we got a lot to talk about. He's going to talk to you a little bit about Formula E, and we'll both discuss the races, albeit delayed, that took place at Martinsville Speedway this past weekend, where most importantly, a short track racer proved what short track racers can do when given the right equipment. Some of you may know who I'm talking about already, and we'll review it, and we'll have a lot to talk about that race and the Cup race itself. So thanks for joining us today. Without further delay, by ourselves here, not just by Mother Nature, let's get this podcast on the road with Rob's Racing Report.
That was a really quick intro. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing for a quick intro. It's always good. But yeah, hey, welcome back to Rob's Racing Report. It's been a couple of weeks since we've done that. We've been back from an off week, so we're kind of getting back into the grooves of things. Things are going back a little bit more to normal. So let's talk about here some of the latest news that you might have missed in the world of racing from the last week, and some of it might be from 2 weeks ago too. Can't really remember. Don't really know. Josh prepares this because he's a good guy. Starting along with F1. Formula One, we got some Formula One news here. The Canadian Grand Prix at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal may be in jeopardy if local governments do not allow fans at the race or decides not to pay an additional $6 million. Should an agreement not be reached, the Turkish Grand Prix will be revived once again to take its place. And this is really key because there's a lot of things right now going on in terms of racing in Canada. NASCAR as well as IndyCar are having their issues trying to figure out what's going on with Toronto. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to IndyCar. But, you know, hey, if NASCAR can't get the Canadian Tire, hopefully we might get IRP, which is still I know your feelings about this, Josh. You want him to go him to see Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. I do too. It's a great race, but the Truck Series has more than one road course now. And I am of the strong feeling, personally, that IRP is deserved of another truck race. So that's just how I'm going to feel. That's my opinion. I would go to it. I would go to it in a heartbeat. I would hope to cover it. If I can't cover it, I'll go to it. So that's just how I would feel. Now for some IMSA news. For the second straight year, speaking of Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, I should have probably read this ahead of time. For the second straight year, IMSA and WeatherTech Sports Car Championship will not be making a trip to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park due to complications with the COVID-19 pandemic. IMSA has replaced the race at Mosport with a sprint race at Watkins Glen. The traditional Salon 6 hours at the Glen will take place as scheduled on June 27th. However, the sprint race will be the following weekend on July 2nd. So we got a little bit of a 4th of July stuff going on here with Watkins Glen and IMSA, which is always good. I think IMSA is fantastically fun at Watkins Glen, so always good to see that stuff. How about some SRX news? Are you excited as excited for SRX as I am?
This is going to be a lot of fun.
I am so excited for SRX that my excitement can't even be contained. I can't wait to see this. I cannot wait to see these cars. I cannot wait to see these drivers. Grassroots and amateur racers will be included in the field of all-stars in the upcoming inaugural season of the Superstar Racing Experience. 6-time NASCAR Modified Champion Doug Cody, dirt racers Brian Brown and Cody Swanson, and Bobby Santos III will join the field in races this season. In addition, the winner of the 2021 Slinger Nationals on July 6th will have a ticket to participate in the SRX race at Slinger Speedway on July 10th. That is cool. You're giving the track champion basically a chance to race amongst legends of auto racing.
I mean, this could be like Ty Majeski or Matt Kenseth. That's kind of what this is.
Right? I mean, you are really putting the people who deserve shots like that in front of a lot of people. That's really cool to see. And we'll talk a little bit more about what it means to put short track drivers in good equipment and equal equipment at the very least and turn them loose and see what they can do. So very, very cool. They're very excited for SRX. I'm literally counting down the days. Of course, obviously, I'm hoping that this coverage is a lot better. I'll get to this in a little bit when we talk about Formula E, but very nervous about the coverage of SRX. Moving on to IndyCar season here, Racer reports that IndyCar is ready to adjust the 2021 schedule if necessary, should the Honda Indy Toronto race be unavailable to be held as scheduled on July 11th, per IndyCar president Jay Fry. Green Savory Racing Promotions is the promoter for the race. They also promote the race at St. Petersburg, Mid-Ohio, and Portland. I understand that, maybe that means that they'll probably have another race there. But again, go to Michigan, you cowards. What you'd like to say something, Josh?
I was just going to say I just should put a subcategory of Canada and not F1, IMSA, SRX, IndyCar. I should just put Canada.
Yeah, troubles in Canada. Still playing in their own hockey league division. Yeah. Toronto Raptors are still playing in Orlando. The Toronto Blue Jays haven't been home in 2 seasons now. It's just great if you're a Canadian sports fan, right? CFL is still, who knows what's going to happen with that? They might will they or won't they merge with the XFL? Who knows?
Well, that would be a big disappointment to a lot of Canadian football fans. I don't.
Well, from what I've understood, and this is getting off topic, but this is what I've understood is the XFL and the CFL might. It's not so much of a merger. A lot of CFL fans and a lot of Canadians, a lot of CFL alumni, a lot of CFL not shareholders, but team owners, whatnot. Stakeholders, I should say, yeah. They don't want that either. So it's not just you. It's not just me. It's not just us, the fans, not really wanting to see a loss of 3-down football. I don't want to see a loss of 3-down football. It's more kind of like, from what I read, is it looks like this is just the latest, and I don't really know a lot about it because there's a lot of things that are still speculation, a lot of things that might be true, and then there's a lot of muddy stuff. But from what I understand, is it could be a lot like the NFL AFL, where it's like both leagues play their own games separately, and they'll have their own championship. So you'll have an XFL championship, you'll still have a Grey Cup and everything.
Yeah. The Grey Cup, very important. Right.
So, but what apparently they're talking about is having the XFL champion play the Grey Cup champion.
That would be sweet. That'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I'd be down for that.
I would be down for that too, but the question would be then, what rules would they use? Would they use Canadian rules or American rules? Because as it stands right now, I think that the CFL would continue to use Canadian rules, and then the XFL would continue to use their own set of rules. But that could change.
Use different recorder.
Now you're really getting into some XFL 2001 level gimmicks here. But
yeah, it would. All right, back to racing.
Back to racing. NBC announced the channel locations for 17 IndyCar races in 2021. 9 races will be aired on NBC, with the remaining 8 airing on NBCSN. The first 2 races of the season at Barber this weekend and St. Petersburg will be aired on NBC. So again, big NBC we're going. And of course, remember, Peacock is the streaming home as well. Not for the races, though. You can't watch the races on Peacock. They made that very clear during the testing broadcast on Peacock. But yeah, it's kind of weird. But you can watch Indy Lights races, which apparently I forget. We talked about this earlier. The IndyCar offseason is so stupidly long, I forget most of the silly season moves, most of the off-season news by the time the first race rolls around. And because the season was supposed to quite literally start a month ago, and it's not yet, I completely forget this again. But yeah, the Indy Lights will be on Peacock. So hopefully that coverage will be really good, because if it's anything like the testing coverage that we saw on Peacock, that was really good too. That was professional. I had never seen a coverage of a test session that well produced before, and no Paul Tracy to boot. What's that, Josh? You got something to say?
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't bring it up on your own, or maybe I'm skipping ahead here for you. But the season finale race will be on NBCSN. I think that is that's a mistake. Why would you not want your season finale race to be on big NBC?
Especially considering the fact that the channel is going to die. The channel's not even going to be there.
Yeah.
By the time the season finale rolls around for IndyCar, the channel will pretty much be on life support. It'll be Speed in June of 2013, I should say. Speed in June of 2013. I mean, why? I mean, I'd be surprised if most television providers even were carrying it by that point. Because sometimes,
a big issue. Maybe that's one thing they're hoping for, would be now we got to kick. We have no choice. Let's kick it over to NBC. Part of it is also going to be probably the start time. That'll be ridiculously late, and it will conflict with whatever NASCAR race is going on there.
So put it on USA or something. If you don't want to put it on NBC, put it on USA, like you say you're going to do.
Even then, just like start it at 2. So what if it's 11 a.m. In Monterey or it's in Long Beach? Who cares? It'll be in Long Beach. The season finale is in Long Beach this year. So who cares?
Yeah, what the heck's up with the season at Long Beach not being on NBC? Like that's a crown jewel race.
That's a crown jewel race, and it's on. And it's the season finale. That is a double.
Yeah. The
main broadcast network deal. I'm like, NBC is in.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's add NBC and CBS Sports to the list of broadcasters I have pissed off and probably won't be working for anytime soon. That just leaves Fox, ESPN. Oh, wait, I said bad stuff about both of those guys on Twitter that they'll bring up. Okay, well, that was fun while it lasted. Santino. Oh, I have to talk about Ramen Noodlehead. Okay. Santino Ferrucci will be attempting the 2021 Indianapolis 500, piloting the number 45 Hy-Vee Honda for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. All right, that's all I want to say about that.
Folks, it's always what I say. He delivered the news, and that is fair. He checked that box.
I did check that box. I'm trying to be as objective as possible, even though I don't like Ferrucci. I did editorialize by calling him Ramen Noodlehead, but you know what? That's not that much of an exaggeration. Look at his hairstyle and tell me it doesn't look like uncooked ramen noodles. Juan Montoya will be driving the number 86 Revson Honda for Arrow McLaren SP at the Indianapolis 500. If you saw the open test that was on Peacock, then... Or actually, I should say this. It wasn't just on Peacock. This is something that I found out. Did you know that Carlin, the official Carlin Racing account, was just freely tweeting out an unlisted stream from the official IndyCar YouTube channel of the test? Not geoblocked. It was not geoblocked. I was able to watch it for free on YouTube in the United States without a VPN. I don't know how that happened, but Carlin just...
rogue. Carlin went rogue.
I think it had to have been for, it probably was for their followers in the UK. But even then, their followers in the US also saw it.
Yeah.
And clicked on the link and found no geo-blocking. So you could technically watch the tests both days for free if you wanted to, thanks to Carlin.
Good job, Carlin.
Yeah.
We appreciate
it. Totally legal. No problems with that. So that is that for IndyCar. Final piece here is NASCAR-related news. James Davison. We got some James Davison news. How about in NASCAR? He's not going to attempt the Indianapolis 500 this year per racer, and he is going to focus on his efforts on a slate of 26 total NASCAR Cup Series races. So he says he finds his home in NASCAR now. And this is very interesting because when we talk about the NASCAR race, I'm going to seriously question that quote from him. And also I'm going to seriously question why he's not at Indy and Cody Ware is, because
stay tuned.
I'm trying to figure that one out, because Davison's actually run the 500 multiple times. Cody Ware, I don't think, has ever been in a competitive open-wheeled race. This is going to be interesting. So, okay, on May 5th is going to be Cinco de Mayo, but it's also going to be the day that Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota will debut each of their next-gen car bodies at 3 o'clock p.m., and the event will be streamed live on the internet, I'm going to assume, on NASCAR's YouTube channel, or Twitter, or Facebook.
Live on internet, they didn't say where. I'm like...
Probably just all of social media, right?
Yeah, it'll be all over. Maybe Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota will all stream it too.
I'm kind of excited for this, because I remember when they did this with the Gen 6 body. That was kind of a cool reveal, and you finally got to see. But it was also cool and funny because I remember someone leaked pictures of diecasts on of the Gen 6 cars a month before they were supposed to come out. So you could see you couldn't see the actual full detail of it, but you kind of got an idea of what the cars were going to look like. I got a kick. Josh, I don't know if you saw this too, but I got a kick out of this. I couldn't stop laughing at this. Did they really say in in the background of the promotion announcement says, and I'm not kidding about this, it seriously says the rebirth of stock. You're unveiling a brand new spec car, and you're saying it's the rebirth of stock.
Well, maybe it has more stock components in it like they wanted it to back in 2019 than the current one.
Maybe.
I mean, they did want to try to put some like actual street, like a part that you could buy for your Camaro, for your Mustang, for your Camry in these cars to help reduce costs because it'd be mass-produced pieces. I don't know. Maybe that's it.
If that's it, then I applaud them for going that route.
But other than that, I only have one lug nut, though.
Again, so does every other racing series in the world except NASCAR.
Show me a car at your local Chevy, Toyota, Ford dealership that has one lug nut and call it a stock car.
Point taken. Point taken on that. That is a good point. I don't know why I always forget that point. I think about that. And then what's worse about me, is I sit here and I criticize, and I have no problem with them going to one lug nut because I'm like, oh, well, every other racing series does it. But then as soon as someone brings up moving the numbers back even a little bit, I get triggered out of my mind. So I admit my hypocrisy here.
And I thought about this, and I haven't posted on social media yet. But if they move the number back, they can't do throwback weekend, by the way.
No, you can't.
You ruin throwback weekends because if you can't run the black number 3 with the 3 back by the wheel. You can't do it. You can't run the rainbow. You can't run the Rainbow Warrior car with the number back, the 24 back by the rear wheel. They would have to have in the rule a caveat for throwback weekend for special paint schemes on a NASCAR designated weekend that would allow the number to be moved around. Because you knew if they move it back and NASCAR doesn't do like what Dale Earnhardt Jr. says they should do, because Dale Earnhardt Jr. should be, in all honesty,
why is he not running NASCAR?
Exactly. He said they should just allow them to put it anywhere between the two wheels and call it a day. And I agree. If Hendrick wants to run all the numbers in the middle, great. If Gibbs wants to run all the numbers by the front wheel, great. If Stewart-Haas wants to run all the numbers by the rear wheel, great.
Yeah, like someone said, just like make it optional, like it is in ARCA, and the ARCA East and West. It's optional. It's entirely optional. You can run it wherever you want.
It is optional, but I won't lie. If I saw a car with the number on the rear quarter panel, it's the car I'm wrecking first.
You're speaking from as a driver. I'm
speaking as you're absolutely right. Like, this is wrong. This is not right.
You're not as a fan. You boo the car that has the numbers wrong. That's what we got to do.
Yes.
Hey, we got a Stern bomb. How about this? Per Adam Stern, the Sports SBJ, NASCAR is reporting working on opening up the infield at racetracks to VIPs and guests from teams and sponsors. The target is next month at Darlington. It's been way overdue for this to happen because, yeah, I understand COVID. Yeah, I understand all that. Makes total sense. But at the same time, NASCAR is a business and a sport, and you can't just cut the business aspect out and expect the sports side to survive.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
This is kind of necessary. As much as it concerns me for COVID, I think we at the very least have enough people vaccinated who, at the very least, if they're going to these races, I'm assuming they're vaccinated, right?
It kind of worries me. It sounds like it's kind of shaping up.
Not fans.
I know, but I'm seeing the comments I'm seeing on social media. Vaccinated, I can go into the infield. So I'm like, so you're only going to allow people who are vaccinated into the infield until a certain time in the future, which could be years, to only allow them into the infield. That to me seems problematic and wrong, but whatever.
And that's
a debate for another day.
Yeah, it's a debate for another day. But at the end of the day, my whole spiel is I'm trying to get. I had to sign up for my vaccine as soon as I could, and I got one. The biggest mistake I made was I'm cutting it so close to Talladega, the Xfinity race. Talladega, it's supposed to start at 4. My appointment is at 3:30.
That's close for you.
That is cutting it close, but it's at IMS. So I don't really feel bad. But no, I mean, I'm getting mine specifically so that I could go back to IMS, and hopefully they allow at the very least vaccinated media in there. That's my biggest hope, because I'm getting vaccinated for a number of reasons, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because I want to be able to go places. You know what I mean? And I think the sooner you get vaccinated, the sooner we're going to be able to open everything up. And that's just fact. I mean, you can't have herd immunity unless most of that herd is vaccinated. So, I mean, yeah, if you could get most people vaccinated, then those unvaccinated people, it's not going to be a problem. You know, those people who claim it's all about choice and all that other BS and nonsense, you know, they're not going to be affected. You know, you're going to have enough people, hopefully, there that have been vaccinated that you're not going to worry about some kind of COVID outbreak that's happening. Not like what you see over in hockey, the whole Canucks has had an outbreak of COVID. It's like, how does this happen? Anyway, Dale Earnhardt Jr. admitted, this is a spoiler alert for later in the show, but if you haven't watched the Xfinity races from this weekend, Josh Berry won. Dale Earnhardt Jr. admitted following Josh Berry's victory at Martinsville Speedway that he and his sister Kelly have looked at the possibility at entering the Cup Series. Jr. said that the next-gen cars brought up these discussions, and while he did say he wouldn't mind building a Cup Series team around Josh Berry, he is working on building a full-time ride for him in the Xfinity Series, where Berry can continue to prove himself. Jr. did note that the charter system is a major financial hurdle at this point in time, which also doesn't surprise me. And also it doesn't surprise me considering the fact that Rick Hendrick still owns a majority share or a minority share. I can't remember if it's a half of his share. It's a minority share.
What your share is, but there'd have to be some sort of Denny Hamlin-esque
right
buy or waiver given for Junior to enter. I'm like, who cares? I've always been like, who cares? You know. Rick Hendrick isn't listed as the owner of all four Hendrick Motorsports cars. You know what? You know,
right?
It's a stupid caveat. It's a stupid caveat in rule.
It really is. There's so many things that NASCAR is. Here's the thing. My ultimate hope is that if NASCAR can build, as much as I hate the charter system, if it actually does what. Let's take it. Let's take it at face value. If it does what it's supposed to do at face value, then I would hope that NASCAR would quite literally be able to get rid of it at some point, or at the very least, open up and create more charters and go back to 43 cars, or at the very least, 38 charters and 43 cars, something like that.
I think that's being discussed.
That should be number one priority right now, because it's really bothering me that we go to Martinsville. 37 cars in the entry list when we could probably get a couple of more show up, and
which it's sad that you don't see Gaunt brothers there.
Right. There's a lot of teams, especially next year with the next gen car, like with what we're talking about, we look at the next gen and we say, oh, well, maybe they can, maybe because it's cheaper, you'll see more teams going, just like Dale Jr., well, look at Gaunt brothers, look at MBM, look at, those are just two that come off the top of my head. There's probably more that I'm forgetting right now. But if those guys could get a charter, I wouldn't be surprised to see them start at some point be midfield teams.
I think
let's say MBM runs the full season. Let's say MBM gets a charter, they can run the full season with like Timmy Hill or something.
Yeah.
I'm not putting it past Timmy Hill to start racking up top 20s. Like by the end of the season, like in 2022, if that becomes true. You know what I mean?
I see top 25, a top 20 for sure at certain tracks. I think there's a real possibility that you could have 4 charters up for grabs for next year. I think Rick Ware has done exactly. He has predicted the future. He might be selling 2 of his charters and cashing in. Okay, because those charters that he has now, the demand has raised the ticket price on it, right?
Yeah, and he might have one of those cars need a driver pretty soon. We'll get to that in a little bit, though.
Yeah, and then you could have NASCAR adding 2. So if there's enough interest, because when you look at Stern is very reliable. Don't think he's ever been wrong. If he's been wrong, you can count him on your hand alone.
It's SBJ. I don't know who they talk to, but I swear the editors at SBJ have like a fortune telling ball.
Yeah.
And they just look into it and they just be like, okay, the NFL is going to renegotiate and the television deals, and Monday Night Football is returning to ABC. Like, I mean, that's pretty much what they did. I don't know how they got that information, but they got that information like way before it was even announced. Like, they reported like NFL considering returning Monday Night Football to ABC. And I'm like, freaking finally! I've been waiting for that. But then they're like, Thursday Night Football is going to go to Amazon Prime. I'm like, no, that's stupid. I hate that. But of course, that was a long. That's a rumor like 6 years ago. That was rumored a long time ago. It's just amazing it happened now. So,
well, Rob,
anyway, but yeah, SBJ totally, and Adam Stern. Adam Stern's never been wrong. So if what you say is true, then
yeah, I mean, he reported earlier that there's potential 10 groups interested, and then you talk about the other teams that include the teams that we've talked about, like Colleague, the money team. Are they still interested? Type of deal. So we'll have to see. Let's move on to the next segment, and we're 26 minutes now in. Featured paint scheme here, Rob. We went with the 2015 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series season here. My little editorialization here. In my opinion, Rob, you could definitely disagree, but I thought the selection of paint schemes was absolutely horrendous in this season. And,
it really was kind of forgettable, to say the least.
Yeah, so Rob, we chose from the same organization. Your pick is?
They had the best paint schemes. All right, yeah, they had the best paint schemes. So Kyle Busch Motorsports like never misses. Usually never misses in the Truck Series. Sometimes they can miss, but they usually don't miss. They usually have really good looking schemes, stuff like that. And I'll say it again, and this is not the first time I've picked this exact same paint scheme before.
It's true.
But I pick it. I pick it every single time it comes up because it's so memorable. It's so good. And it really looks good, especially here on a truck. So Daniel Suarez ran a limited schedule in Truck Series in 2015, 2016, before he got moved up to Cup abruptly because Carl Edwards retired. Which, by the way, did you see Carl Edwards made his first public appearance since 2016, 17 on Race Hub last week?
I saw the interview on Fox.
I could not believe it. I was like, he lives. What's he been doing?
Farming.
That's
what
he's going to run for Missouri Senate like he said he was going to do?
We'll see.
That's always been the rumor.
That's been the rumor since he retired, and we'll have to see.
I don't know. I would like to see it. I would also like to see him wrestle. I don't know why. I always pictured Carl Edwards as a wrestler.
Yeah. Okay. Crap.
Okay, mainly because, do you remember back in the day there was a Gillette Young Guns commercial, and this is legitimately the reason why I've always thought that Carl Edwards could go wrestling. And this is the whole reason, is because there was an old Gillette Young Guns commercial with John Cena, and he's like, since you guys taught me to drive, I'm going to teach you how to wrestle. And Carl Edwards just beats the crap out of John Cena in this commercial, right?
Yeah.
And it's really good. It's really good. He really sells it.
I think he should have been on that, whatever it was, SmackDown or WrestleMania, like what Kyle Busch did with Kurt Busch. He should have been involved in that.
I would love to see I would love to see Carl Edwards just walk out. Here's a list. Here's, before I get further off topic, here's something I really want to see: is Carl Edwards walk down at Raw or SmackDown or whatever, even a WWE pay-per-view. I don't care. Make him the celebrity wrestler. I don't care. Like Bad Bunny was in WrestleMania. By the way, I watched WrestleMania over the weekend. I explained this to Josh, but there was a lot of rain, so there wasn't much to watch. So I just watched the Masters and WrestleMania. So those were the only two sports that were on. But here's what I want to see: Carl Edwards walk out, and I need him to walk into the ring, walk up to the third rope, and do a backflip off onto the ring, and then just go do whatever. Just go wrestle. Just do that. I need to see that. I would love to see that.
That's fair. I think that'd be neat to see. I'll agree.
Completely unprompted. Everybody's like, what's Carl Edwards doing? What's Carl Edwards doing? Holy cow, he's on Raw. Dude, everybody, check it out. Carl Edwards just randomly appeared on Raw. Wouldn't that just be the ultimate, random troll? right?
Yeah.
Carl Edwards just comes walking right out. I don't know. I am really off topic. Daniel Suarez. I was talking about Daniel Suarez. He drove this RS car. Carl Edwards also drove this RS car. So Daniel Suarez, he ran in the truck series for Kyle Busch Motorsports. He had actually pretty decent finishes, though he wasn't running for points, obviously, because he was running for points in the Xfinity series. But yeah, he had a pretty good series of finishes here. Ninth at Daytona, fourth at Atlanta, sixth at Martinsville, sixth at Kansas, second at Dover, second at Texas, fourth at Kentucky, and then 30th at Bristol. That was his first finish outside of the top 10. Then Chicagoland, he finished fourth. Martinsville, he finished 16th, so 2 finishes outside the top 10. Now, Texas is second, Phoenix fourth, and then Homestead 30th. So 3 finishes outside the top 10, 2 finishes of 30th, a worst running at the finish of 16th. Yeah, I got to say, Suarez did not bad for himself. No wins, but that's okay. Don't really need to get the wins right away. You're running part-time, just trying to get experience. He did get those wins in the Xfinity series, though, which was still cemented why I always... Every time I think about Daniel Suarez, I think about him beating Kyle Busch at Michigan in the Xfinity series.
It's true.
And that's cementing my high opinion of Daniel Suarez ever since. And I refuse to allow anybody to tell me that Suarez is a bad driver. I firmly believe he got the raw end of the stick at Gibbs.
Absolutely.
He got the raw end of the stick at Stewart-Haas. He got screwed for a year at Gaunt Brothers. Now he's with a team that is legitimately competitive and actually invested fully behind him, and he is showing. And I think his Xfinity team with Gibbs was far more invested in him than his Cup Series team ever was.
Yep.
And I think the results show that. So, Josh, that's where I'm going on Daniel Suarez. I love that paint scheme, that orange RS paint scheme, even though it had red numbers, which I always felt was a bit of a design oddity. I felt like it would have looked a little bit better with white numbers. But, hey, it looks okay on the truck. It still ran fast. It still looked good. And, I was always a big fan of Daniel Suarez in the truck series. So that's my featured paint scheme. Huh?
While it's your mind, go to J-Ski and go back to 2017. I think it was on both Carl Edwards and Daniel Suarez's pages for their series, and look up the original RS paint scheme. And see if it's still there. It should still be there. Mine is Kyle Busch Motorsports number 54 Jegs Toyota. The truck was mostly black all around, and then the yellow and white boxes kind of came up through the sides, and not really square, but that's how I would kind of, to simply put it, label it, is a boxes. And then in the middle had this metal looking design, grid looking type deal. I liked it. Really nice truck. I also always the Jegs cars or cars and trucks. I mean, there's only 1 or 2 that have been a miss. And I will say they've been Venturini cars. So sorry, Bill and Billy. But in 2015, the 54 had a variety of drivers: Justin Boston, Christopher Bell, Matt Tiff, Greg Golding, Kyle Busch, and Cody Coughlin. They drove the Jegs cars. Busch and Coughlin did, and they only did it in 1 race each. Coughlin was at Michigan. He started 18th and finished 20th, and Kyle Busch drove it at Bristol just a few weeks later, maybe a week later. He started first and finished second in that race. So that's mine. Again, black, white numbers. So it was, again, in 2015, so horrible paint scheme selection from that truck series. I mean, I was disappointed in myself, but I'm like, dang, I'm glad it took us 3 years to choose this one instead
Let's talk about terrible truck series paint schemes this time around, right? That's what your thought process is going for.
What is your least favorite? That's what I should have done. So what's your least favorite paint scheme from the 2015 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series? Rob, did you see the paint scheme?
I'm looking for it. Which one are you talking? The RS Surfboard, or are you talking about something else? Because I'm looking for it. Well, I've gone through 2015 and 2016. Now I'm up to 2017 looking at Suarez's car.
Well, here, okay, let me, I think I might have told you the wrong year. It was, Carl Edwards' first year.
15. So I already looked through that.
Okay. So maybe it was 15. Let me see if I see it, and maybe you just...
Oh, here it is. Ruckus. This one was really nice. from 17, Suarez had orange numbers there, white numbers. And it looks really good there, but it's not the same RS scheme.
No, it's not that one either. Let me go to one last shot here. I'm going to go to 2015. His 18 car. See if it's there.
Man, Suarez has a ton of great.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it's there. Go to 18. The second to last picture.
Go to 2018. You said
2015
on the 2015.
RS. Yeah, look at the original paint scheme that they had. For Daniel Suarez in the Xfinity series.
Oh, in the Xfinity, I'm stupid. I'm looking in the Cup series.
I thought it was. I did tell you. You're not stupid. I told you both because I couldn't remember if it was the 19 or the 18 that they put the paint scheme on. I couldn't remember.
Oh,
I remember
Jesus, I hated that.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw this. I was on a hole number 3 at Chippendale Golf Course in Kokomo, Indiana, waiting for a golfer to play through the hole so I could do whatever I was needing to do. I think I might have been eating an egg, bacon, and cheese sandwich.
Yum.
There's some more detail for you that maybe you just didn't need to know. All right, here, let's move on now. This week's winners.
Glad they changed that. Holy cow. That looks garbage compared to what they ended up finally running.
All right, so yeah, everyone, if you want to know what we're looking at, go to 2015 Xfinity Series on jski.com, paint schemes, and click on the 18 for Joe Gibbs Racing. You'll see it. Second to last picture at the bottom. So this week's winners, Extreme E debuted in Saudi Arabia. Rob, I didn't catch any of this. Did you catch any of this?
I did, actually. That was it was one of the only programs, real sports programs outside of the National Basketball Tournament that was on Easter. And it was really neat because I didn't really know what to expect here with Extreme E. I wasn't really sure if this was going to be like a rally type experience or if it was going to be more like rally cross in that they run, actual laps and have joker laps and stuff like that. It was kind of a mix of both a little bit. You had driver changes. You had, a lot of different elements in there that were very different. Obviously, the requirement of having one male driver and one female driver is interesting. I think that makes for a very good balance. But at the same time, it was kind of interesting because I was like, well, it's one thing to say, this has always been the thing that kind of frustrates me with. I understand there's a reason why we have a big push for women in racing, and I just got done doing a whole Women's History Month surrounded by that. But I think it's unfair to them, and maybe not so because they ended up. A lot of these women were very, very talented and very, very good drivers. But I feel like it's unfair in some of these cases like that to put, like an unknown driver next to Sebastian Loeb, right? Or just throwing that out. I'm not saying Loeb's partner was a nobody, but I'm just saying like that's kind of what bothered me. Like if we're doing it just for the sake of diversity, that's not really why we're supposed to do it. We're supposed to pick very talented drivers. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Extreme vetted these drivers very, very well. There was no obvious talent discrepancies there, but that was definitely a worry that I had going into it. Yeah. I was like, if you're just throwing this person in who might have a few years experience next. I don't really know anything about them, and that's really probably my problem. I know more about the male drivers than I did the female, but it ended up being okay. There was really no issues there at all, but that was a kind of a weird concern that I had going in. I didn't want it to make. My biggest worry was I was like, don't do this because I don't want people to go online and say, "Oh, the woman was bad. They messed up the guy. They were so slow or something." Because that's what always happens. I hate those sexist comments that you always see, and that's what I didn't want to see. That's why I was worried about that. But then when I started seeing them hold their own, be like, okay, extremely vetted very well. These people were qualified. They deserved the positions that they were in, and I'm glad that I'm glad I didn't see any of that. I didn't see any sexist comments on Twitter because obviously there wasn't any need for any, thankfully. But yeah, it was really good. Really good, fun time to watch. I would recommend it. If you get a chance to watch it. Fox actually did a heck of a lot better job than this Formula E race we're going to talk about in a little bit. They did a good job at covering it. Really, obviously it's pretty easy to air a prepackaged thing, because it's obviously tape delayed. It's kind of hard to do a lot of rally stuff like that live. It can be done, but it's not something I'm sure Fox wanted to put the money into. But yeah, it was really, really good, really fun, really good fun. So I'm excited for the next round. I don't know when that'll be, but I enjoyed Extreme E. I definitely gave them all a follow on Twitter. Started to do a lot more research than I had before, obviously, on the show. So, but yeah, next I'm going to move into Formula E because Josh, we talked about it. I'm not so sure how much you watched of Formula E this week, but I had a rough time watching it. So first of all, let's talk about the winners. Race 1 was won by Jean-Eric Vergne. Race 2 was won by Stoffel Vandoorne. Both races kind of complete disasters again for Formula E, not just from a racing standpoint. First of all, okay, no, I say that. I take that back. The racing was actually really good. The track is really good. But Formula E has more and more problems with just bad luck or just obscure things happening. Like a manhole cover ended someone's race. You had crashes all over the place. It was a wreck fest almost. It was a good street circuit though. But at the end of the day, the biggest problem I had with watching it was the fact that CBS Sports Network probably did the worst possible. Okay, now CBS Sports, crossing them off the list of future employers. Hold on. So here's what they did. So they aired the first Formula E race, and it was live. They aired it live on CBS Sports Network, and it was all right. But the way they positioned the commercials was terrible. I mean, it was truthfully terrible. I mean, there was so much stuff going on, and they would just cut to commercials with no rhyme or reason, as if like they'd already decided, okay, we're going to go to commercial at this timestamp, regardless of what happens, regardless of what's going on in the race. We're just going to go to commercial. So that made it frustrating as all heck to follow the race. And then the second day, you make matters worse, is, some people are wondering, I bet CBS Sports Network, that, they picked up the rights to this. I assumed it was going to be held and handled better than Fox, which, to be honest, set the bar really low. Fox set the bar about as low as it could go. And CBS managed to lower that bar by not even airing the race live, the race 2 live. So it aired instead on YouTube, live, ungeoblocked to everybody in the United States, instead of CBS Sports Network airing that race. Do you know what they aired, Josh? They aired a rerun of the third round of the Masters that had literally been replayed at 8 o'clock on CBS SN in prime time. So if you had missed the Masters, you probably got to watch it again at 8 o'clock in prime time on SN, assuming you have CBS SN.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, I'm trying to figure out who in the heck is waking up at 7 o'clock to watch a rerun of the Masters, a game that they probably already watched live, or already caught the tape delay of, or by this point had already read about the results. I'm trying to figure out why the race couldn't be broadcast live at 7 a.m. on CBS Sports. There was nothing on. It was a rerun of the Masters, but we got it placed on YouTube. Now, the great news about that, though, is we got no commercials. So, on one hand, it was really awful that CBS wouldn't even broadcast the second race, period, but at least they didn't cut in at terrible times to show ill-timed commercials. Anyway, Formula E is just getting tougher and tougher to watch in the United States, while Extreme E was actually as simple as could be. Really not sure what happened there, but yeah, Formula E, I mean, good races, good street circuit. I really love that Rome E-Prix circuit. It's really good. It's very odd, though, that they had to do rolling starts instead of standing starts because of the way the front stretch was. It was just really weird. Like, the top 10 cars were on one street, and then the back 14 cars were like on a totally different street. And then they started the race, and then they had them do a rolling start, which was just very bizarre to see in any kind of world championship. It's open-wheeled world championship. That's not IndyCar.
Yeah.
Usually you would see something like that in IndyCar, which is very common. They do rolling starts all the time. But over in Europe, a rolling start is just not common at all. I mean, very seldom do you see rolling starts over in Europe. So just overall, a very interesting race, a very different race for Formula E. So again, if you were in another country Seriously, if you were in every other country, you got to watch this race, the second race, live on television. But if you were in the United States, one of the biggest markets in the entire world, you had to watch it on YouTube at 7 a.m. Holy cow, what a disaster. Josh, tell since you're leading, you can go ahead and tell us all about the rest of the NASCAR stuff. But that's the European stuff that we got to watch this week.
Yeah, well, you said it earlier. Josh Berry won the Xfinity Series race. I was able to catch this race in whole, even though it was delayed. Mother Nature must, one, they must hate NASCAR. She must hate NASCAR, and two, she must hate me because I was like, awesome. Get to watch the Xfinity race, get to watch the Cup race. We had to request a day off. What'd she do? She rained on my parade again. So I couldn't watch any of the Cup race. I couldn't follow it on Twitter. My job right now does not allow me to follow anything in depth on Twitter. So Josh Berry, I was able to watch him. I was so nervous. I felt like, I will admit, just because I knew how big of a moment it was, I felt like I was going to throw up because it was such that, this is a big moment and hopefully a turning point, which we'll mention later, for NASCAR. But he becomes the first winner since Dale Earnhardt Jr. did it 15 years ago. And then Martin Truex Jr. won the Cup race. He did not dominate this one at all. He becomes the first two-time winner of 2021, ending the streak at 7. Someone tweeted, and I did remember this from a few weeks ago, after Joey Logano won. The last time we had 7 different winners to start the season, Joey Logano won the 7th race and ended the streak, and the streak ended once again this year when he won the 7th race of the season. But you know what? We'll go for 9 out of 10. That's what we'll go for. We'll go for 9 different winners in the first 10 races.
We can hope.
We can hope. So we'll start with the Xfinity Series here. I don't think I've ever seen such an aggressive race.
It was great. I was
great.
Enjoying every aspect of that race, especially when the rains came the first time. And I wanted to say this before, but I didn't want to take up too much time. I wanted to wait for when we got into the actual discussion. When the rains came and they were interviewing Josh Berry, I sat there and I thought to myself, wouldn't it be really awesome if he won this race when it got restarted?
I thought the same thing. I had a feeling on Friday night, this might be when he wins.
It's weird how, sometimes when you watch enough racing, you just see something and you just, have a sixth sense that, this is going to happen. I've talked about it on the show about how many times it happened to me at Indianapolis. When I had a sixth sense of where I just knew what was going to happen before it happened. And I feel like you and I, if that's true, both of us had that sixth sense moment. This was Josh Berry's race to lose no matter what happened.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I just had a really... On Friday, and I was so disappointed because as a result of delayed, I wasn't able to write the Xfinity breakdown for frontstretch.com. Darn it! This had to happen, and I couldn't write about it. I was so disappointed about it. I had a lot I wanted to share. But obviously, kind of jumping to the end here, but good for Josh Berry. We'll talk about a little bit more about that in a second. But what did you think about the Jeb Burton and David Starr penalty on Friday night when they left too big of a gap when it came to the choose cone rule? And all this, for context for the listeners, in case you didn't know, this is all about trying to save a lap. So if you noticed, if you went back and watched the Cup Series race at Martinsville 1 year ago in June, we didn't have the choose cone rule then, all right? They're going around there pretty fast with 1 to go, all right? Leader chooses his lane, boom, second place guy goes out the outside most likely. But now, with the choose cone, they are crawling around turns 1 and 2 and down the backstretch. And when it's time to go, the pace car just guns it into the pit lane. And then the field kind of resumes up. Why? Because they're still sorting out the lane selection. So in an effort to save a lap, and essentially let's get one more lap of green flag racing in, these guys got penalized because they were trying to choose which lane to go into. I have a problem with this. First off, typically 99% of the time, 999 times out of 1,000, I'm going to complain about a long caution and wasted laps. But here, this is an unnecessary penalty because we saw how crowded it was. Rob, I know you did. You saw how crowded it was trying to find the selection there and guys being indecisive, and for whatever reason, why the heck would you not choose the bottom unless you're going to gain 6 rows is beyond me. It evidently is that big of a decision, but I thought it was. I know they gave everyone a warning like the prior caution, but this is just a what's the word? Orchestrate, and I don't even know what the word is now. I had it in my mind, I just totally blanked it. But this is a systematic error that shouldn't happen. Rob, what are your thoughts on it?
I thought it was really interesting. I was I don't know how to feel about this choose cone rule still. I think it's interesting.
I like the choose cone rule. I love it. Not to interrupt you, but I love the choose cone rule. It's just that this part of the sacrifice is that you might have to go one more lap to make sure everyone has a fair shot at choosing their lane and getting reset.
I mean, if it's done to save a lap and then it ends up costing a lap anyway, it kind of seems pointless. But I mean, here's the thing: I don't have any. I mean, I like how the choose cone. I like, at the very least, I thought that the choose cones rules were black and white. Like, okay, so you go to the outside, you're going to restart in the outside. You go to the low side, you're going to restart on the inside. If you touch the choose cone, you go to the back. That's a penalty. You got to make your choice. You can't, you got to like hurry up. Like, let's go. And now they throw this in here, and I'm like, well, if it's a simple penalty of like, oh, you touched the choose cone, then that I get. But it's like you're leaving too much space between you and what?
And this isn't a problem at other tracks. No. And again, all this is because NASCAR, the control tower, doesn't want to waste a lap. But at a track like
still wasting a lap anyway, I feel like.
You're going to have to waste it. I would say find other ways to save a lap as well. That was frustrating. Sorry to interrupt you there again.
No, you're fine. I'm not.
Well, and we'll talk one more thing before we talk about the end here. Josh Williams is NASCAR's poster boy now for spinning out intentionally. I thought.
Oh, that. Well, what do you? Okay. Here's the thing. Here's what I have to say to that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're good.
Here's my thought on that. It's Martinsville, number one. Number two, you clearly have a left rear flat. You're stuck on the outside. Nobody's going to let you in. It's a processional. If you can get to the inside, great. If you can't, and you just keep trying, it's honestly better, and it's better for you to just spin your car out and cause a caution and take the lap penalty than run around for like 2 or 3 laps at a slow pace, finally get to pit road, maybe lose another lap on pit road. You're basically just saving yourself some time. You spin the car out, just literally take the penalty. The penalty for spinning on purpose is, I think they held him 1 lap, right?
Oh yeah, 1 lap.
Okay, again, way better penalty than trying to run around with a tire down the entire time, trying to hope that I can just get in, even though nobody's probably going to let him in no matter what, to get to pit road, and then probably lose another lap on pit road to repair all the damage, the fender damage that you probably already have too on the car. It just makes more sense to spin yourself out. I don't blame him. I really can't blame him. He literally did what I would have done in the situation. If you can't get down, can't get to pit road, take the penalty, eat it, try and come back, try and get the lucky dog or something. But it's better to go 1 lap down than at Martinsville than to go 5 laps down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think a NASCAR 5 years ago would have thrown the caution for a slow car like that. But now, I don't know if NASCAR would have thrown a caution just because he's riding around the top slow with a flat tire because of everyone screaming, that's not a caution, that's not a caution, that's not a caution. Well, you know what? At some tracks, it kind of needs to be a caution. At Kansas, you're going to find an opening down where you can at least get down to the apron at some point. But when you've got 40 Xfinity Series cars on the track, that is a half mile, barely over a half mile in length, you're not going to have too many opportunities to get down there quickly with a flat tire. But still, now NASCAR goes, you know what? You spun intentionally. We're going to give you a penalty. I kind of thought, if only his name was Bush, if only his name was Elliott, he wouldn't have got a penalty. I'm just saying.
I mean, they should have penalized him. They should have penalized both. They should have penalized Kyle Busch at the time. too. But, like, it should be a 1-lap penalty if you self-spin.
If
Because,
you
again,
you are not manipulating the race, but
you're helping your own race.
Yeah,
so at the very least, they should penalize your own race. But again, like I said, that's a penalty. I'd rather take a 1-lap penalty than try and do it on merit and then end up going 5 laps down. 3-4 laps down. At least with the 1-lap penalty, you can you take your penalty, you get back out on the track, you try and fight and try and get the lucky dog. That's the best case scenario there. That at that point, your race can still be saved. You go 2, 3, 4 laps down at Martinsville, your race is not going to be saved at that point.
At that stage of the race, you were done. You're not going to get, unless there's a bunch of cautions, you have a bunch of wave rounds, you are not, or you won't get the wave round because no one's pitting. You will not get back on the lead lap. Last point here, I teased about it earlier. Josh Berry's win underscores why the Truck Series needs to return to its roots. I tweeted about it. Him having this opportunity with Dale Earnhardt Jr., and now he has shown what he can do on short tracks, where he has made his bread and butter the past few years, where he's won a championship last year. Okay, the Truck Series. We just had a throwback episode a few weeks ago where Rob, you and I talked about this back in 2019, and I said the Truck Series needs to serve 3 different purposes. 1, driver development, right? Okay. Move your wheel up the ranks, go from ARCA to Truck, Xfinity up to Cup, if that's your desire. 2 needs to be this destination series for guys like Elliott Sadler, a Justin Allgaier, and AJ Allmendinger, who have not made it in the Cup Series, probably can still get the job done if the right opportunity came, but aren't getting that opportunities. Let's go down to the Truck Series. Let's have some fun. Let's go win races. Let's go compete for championships. Let's go show these young guys how it's done. But 3, in the Josh Berry situation, these short track guys can put a truck together, can get a team together, and go race at a track like Langley, a track like Martinsville, a track like Oxford Plains, a track like IRP, Kern County, Evergreen, Tucson. There's 50 short tracks in this country that could host a truck race, not with competitive pit stops, but go back to what the Truck Series was in the beginning, where you have this halftime break, you change your tires, you put fuel in the truck, you make your adjustments for the second half of the race. I'm not saying you would have to do it necessarily like that. You could still do the stages like they did at Eldora, and we'll do it in Knoxville later this year. This is for guys like Josh Berry. That is what this is for. This needs to reinvigorate that argument of, okay, the Truck Series needs to return to its roots. It needs to have its own identity and not be Xfinity Series 2.0. Rob, any comment on that?
I echo all of your statements. I have really no further comment on that other than because, as I said earlier, I would love to see the Truck Series return to Lucas Oil Raceway, or as it's also known as IRP. And there's a lot of other. I mean, clearly we've seen now. At first, this is, and I said I didn't want to say much on it, but I'm going to anyway. At first, I didn't think that. At first, for a long time, I really and truthfully thought that the reason why the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series didn't go to such short tracks was because they couldn't put safer barriers on there, or because of too little pit stalls, what have you. Clearly, NASCAR has thrown all of that out the window and they said, "No, we can make this work. We can make it work. We'll just if we're desperate enough to do it, we can make it work." So Absolutely. Why are we not making it work then?
Yeah.
If you could just make these exceptions, you could just take. Oh, we want to run Bristol on dirt. Oh, but we have to remove the safer barrier. Just take it out. Just take it out. Drivers aren't going that fast anyway. Well, these trucks probably aren't going that fast anyway. You could probably put styrofoam blocks there, and it would probably do the same amount of good. You know what I mean?
And I think the trucks now, again, at Bristol you need safer barriers, but I think there's a lot of half-mile tracks out there, 4/10 mile tracks, 3/8 mile tracks that are short enough and are low banked enough that these trucks are safe enough that I would be willing to ask them, like, hey, do you feel comfortable going to this track that doesn't have safer barriers? I think some of these guys would say yes, because some of these guys race late models at these tracks that don't have safer barriers, and I might argue that they're not as safe as a truck.
I think that what they should do is go to most of the short tracks that the ARCA East and West goes to. Like I think about Colorado National Raceway.
Great example.
It's one of the most picturesque racetracks out there. It's very beautiful. It's a short, flat oval. The Truck Series has raced there before. It is home to the closest finish in the Truck Series, to my knowledge, at least. It was almost like a it was almost like a tie, I think. They had one race there. Yeah. It was almost like a tie. And like they almost just declared it a tie. Like if they did not have digital timing and scoring, photo finish just told you nothing. Like you literally had to go down there and measure to the very inch to figure out who won that race. But it's a perfect racetrack. It's flat, so you're not very fast. Mm-hmm. So what are these cars going to top out at? 80 miles an hour? These cars are safe enough. These drivers can take an 80-mile-an-hour hit to a concrete wall with crumple zones and a Hans device. They're not going to get hurt. Now, if we're talking about to a 200-mile-an-hour hit, you want that. But this is an 80-mile-an-hour hit in a truck that's basically built for safety. You've got a Hans device on. You've got crumple zones in the front and the rear of the truck. You've got crush panels in there. You're basically in there as a cocoon. Nothing is going to hurt you, especially not at something like a top speed of 80 miles an hour and probably a low speed of 45 through the corners. You know what I mean?
I agree.
They don't need safer barriers for that. They could still race there at a track. I use Colorado as an example just because it's flat. If you go to a high bank track like say Winchester or something, maybe I could make the argument there because you'd probably be getting up to like 150. Right? In a truck, maybe top speed, not through the corners, but maybe like at the end of the speedway before you get off the gas and onto the brakes. You're probably 145, 150, somewhere around that bracket. So that would be a place where I could argue. But like I think about that track. Like if you go to a flat quarter mile, these trucks don't need safer barriers. They don't need live pit stops. You could just do it. You could just
at Eldora.
Exactly.
The Eldora race has proven that. All right, the Eldora race has proven that NASCAR is willing to do it. It's all to me. I think it more so than anything. Unfortunately, comes down to TV and track promoter dollars, and I think that I just think we need to take a long, deep look at what this series can be and should be. In my opinion, again, others may not hold that opinion. I know Rob, you and I share it. Others may not share our opinion in that, but what made the Truck Series so great and had such a lore to it in the 90s, and even the early 2000s a little bit because they had lost, they had switched to a lot of the bigger tracks, and really Mesa Marin and South Boston were really those small budget tracks that they still went to, and Mansfield for
IRP was the longest tenured.
And IRP too, but the Xfinity Series was going there as well, but they just need to go back to that. Just plain simple. And Josh Berry proved it because you can get stories like that on there and get these guys exposure and maybe opportunities at bigger teams for full-time efforts in the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series.
And more fans want to see that too, because I think I feel like the Truck Series, NASCAR themselves would have absolutely no problem whatsoever selling out a race. Again, I'm using Colorado National as an example. If they put the trucks there, I feel like they would have no problem selling that race out. And you would get a heck of a lot of short track fans that normally probably wouldn't show up to a NASCAR race. Probably couldn't, first of all, because it's in Colorado. But even if you picked a track in North Carolina or something, I still think you would probably get a sellout crowd because it would be the Truck Series on a short track. And that's what people want to see anyway.
It's cheaper for the teams. You don't have to worry about aero. You don't have to do all this aero testing. And I think you could also loosen up rules on you got a dent there on the side. Go ahead. Start the race. All right, so we should move on here to the Cup Series real quick because we have just crossed a few moments ago the hour mark here. Rob, you kind of wanted to talk about a Cody Ware, James Davison.
Yeah, I want to talk about this here as soon as I can. So I'm trying to figure this out, and I've been trying to figure this out all day. So if you didn't know, if you watched the Xfinity, or not the Xfinity Series, the Cup Series race on Saturday and then later on Sunday. So on Saturday, the crash that triggers the rain was Cody Ware getting into James Davison. So Cody Ware gets into James Davison. You can't see hardly anything with Fox being what they are, just completely incompetent. Again, FOX Sports. Oh, wait, I already crossed them off. Never mind. But, you can't get away anymore with that. So all we get, again, is this one angle of this accident where it clearly looks like Cody Ware took out James Davison. So it's not like a situation where at Phoenix where we were wondering, did Cody Ware actually wreck Anthony Alfredo on purpose? Well, we don't know. We only have one view of it and a bunch of hearsay, so we don't really know. And in this case, great. Again, we got one view of it and a bunch of hearsay we've got to deal with.
We had two views of it. We had like the track view and then the view from Kevin Harvick.
Yeah. I was referring primarily to the view of Kevin Harvick, but yeah, you're right. We did have two views. But yeah, I'm looking at that and I'm like, all right, so first of all, before I get into the rest of this here, is Fox needs to do straight up a better job of pit reporting. And we talked about this early in the show. Regan Smith blocked me, so I don't really care what. He's not going to hear this. He's not going to see this, so I really don't care. The fact of the matter is, Regan Smith is not a very good pit reporter because he is trying to present himself as a journalist, something that he is not. First of all, it's plainly obvious he's not a journalist because he's constantly starting every single sentence with "talk about." And that's just a pet peeve of mine, and I'm sure Josh's, and everybody who's ever been with a class with Malcolm Moran. They can all tell you the same thing. You don't start a question with "talk about," and every single time Regan Smith has to interview somebody, I cringe because he starts every one of his questions with "talk about," and then Fox decides, let's have him do sit-down interviews too. He's, hey, talk about this, talk about this, talk about whatever, blah, blah, blah. Point is, we don't know what's going on because Fox doesn't have any pit reporters that probably are going to even bother investigating this. So what do we get? We get the Twitter journalists who are pretty much the people that are there at the track, that are allowed to be at the track and have scanners, right? So, the Jeff Glucks, the Kelly Crandalls, the Jim Utters, the Jordan Bianchis, man, am I missing anybody? Probably. Bob Pockris, of course. Well, Pockris didn't talk that much about this. It was really Kelly Crandall that brought this up mostly, and Dustin Albino too. But so James Davison, basically, he's mad with Cody Ware for wrecking him, right? And he starts going on, and this is what I heard, and I didn't have a specific. I tried to look for a real source, like one of those journalists, to confirm this. So I don't know, and I'll have to see if any of them did confirm it, but James Davison went off on Cody Ware and calling him stuff like, if he does this one more time, I'm going to wreck him, or Rick, control your son, and all this stuff. And that just came from random Twitter users, so I don't know how much of that is true. It wouldn't surprise me given what Kelly Crandall reported, saying she heard someone say that if the 51 of Cody Ware touches the 15 one more time, I'm sending his butt to the truck. Basically, Josh and I before the show, we theorized that perhaps this was Rick Ware talking. We don't know. We don't know if that was Rick Ware or not. We don't have any solid reporting. We just have hearsay, which is unfortunate. So now it begs the question. So we've got James Davison is mad with Cody Ware. Cody Ware is supposed to run Indianapolis. He was out testing in Indianapolis, but I guess he's now just wrecking his own teammates, and we're not quite sure why he's wrecking his own teammates, why he's wrecking his dad's cars. But he goes out at Indy, follows around Pietro Fittipaldi. The question really flat out remains is, what is Cody Ware doing? I love Cody. I've said it multiple times on this show. I do genuinely like Cody Ware, but I have to actually ask, what are you doing? I mean, these are your dad's cars you are wrecking, playing around with, without a care in the world, and you're supposed to go out there and run the Indianapolis 500, the greatest and biggest race in the history of motorsports. There's only two other races that can compare to this race, and you're probably not going to race in either. Yeah, okay, he might make it to the WEC if Rick Ware's. He might make it to Le Mans. Who knows? He could make it to Le Mans, but he's trying to go for Indianapolis now. And if he's just playing bumper cars out there at Martinsville, I'm genuinely worried what he would do in an Indy car. And this is again, this is coming from someone who likes Cody. I want to see Cody do well. I really think Cody is good, but what is he doing? And I understand, some people like to bring up the mental health aspect of it because Cody brings it up a lot. Cody is very open about his mental health. If there is a problem in his mental health that is causing him to act this way, like if he is having manic episodes behind the wheel of the race car, that is something that you need to address. Like that is something that if my mental health was getting so bad to the point in which it was affecting my job, the number one thing I am going to do is start getting help, is find a therapist and figure out what could do. Cody's got money. I'm sure his dad's got money. The dude could probably find a solid therapist that would travel with him to the racetracks and work on these things. There's no reason he should be putting his life and other people's lives in danger because he has a free pass to do it. I don't understand. Now, all of this could not be true. It could be that Cody Ware just got loose. And all of this is just complete, total random speculation. And I could be completely wrong. Cody could come on this program and say I'm wrong. And I would hope that he does. The problem is we have nobody on pit road that can report and find this stuff out because Jamie Little is the only one there who actually legitimately has the experience, knowledge, and expertise to do the job. And Regan Smith is pretty much just putzing around back here asking talk about questions all day. And I just wish personally that we knew more about this situation. I wish I knew more about what is going on internally at Rick Ware Racing. Because it is very interesting to me that you have essentially a driver's father who owns the team and the driver's son racing the team, and he could get fired. Like, this is something. I'm not saying Cody Ware is going to get fired, but like,
he could have been parked.
He could have been parked. Why is nobody looking into this? Why is it all that we can do? And, Rick Ware, Cody Ware, they're not going to be called up to NASCAR to do press conferences, to do video press conferences anytime soon. So probably the only way you're going to get a word in edgewise with them is with their PR people or to meet them in the garage or on pit road. So really the only people right now that can do this thing justice would be the pit reporters. Josh, what do you have to say?
Pre-COVID, we would have found out more because each driver was required to have a media session in your town. And I know Kelly Crandall, if she knew that information, she's the only one talking about it. And for whatever reason, 1 week later, we're going to Richmond that no one else was going to pick up on it. She'd raise her hand like, I got a question for you, Cody. I got a question for you, James. And she would ask that question. But because I don't think there's a requirement right now in this COVID virtual world, unfortunately. We've taken steps back in that. I hope Kelly goes out and sticks her neck out and says, hey, you want to talk? Can I know more about this? I mean, it's not necessarily, not all PR is good PR, but I would love to hear James' side on this one because I feel like something else was there. There's something else there.
He called him mentally ill on the radio, and that's what really picked me up. It seemed like Davison was inferring that Ware was going through some kind of, I don't want to say episode, but that's what it seemed like he was inferring, and that's where the conflict is arising. Cody hasn't made any. Huh?
I'm sorry, but may I throw this out? Is there? I'm ignorant to this. Is saying he's going mental, is that some sort of Australian slang?
That's a very good point. Now, I don't know. It very well could be. It very well could be. But that again would be something that a journalist should be able to ask.
Yeah, we need to know that. We talked about it before. There's just an unfortunate, and I tweeted about it during the Xfinity race when Adam Alexander made a comment himself. I just wish that we knew more about the back end of the field, the last 10 cars in the Cup field. We've seen. There's a kind of enough information for the top 30, either because of name recognition or just a big story, like Aspire, with Corey LaJoie, he's big enough top 30, but
nobody's talking about Corey LaJoie, and he's absolutely killing it right now, Aspire.
The results don't tell that story. I had a comment on here later, but the results don't tell this whole story, for him especially, but we don't. The Rick Ware cars get zero attention. I know they're not the fastest. I know they're not the greatest team on earth. Whatever they're doing, that again, we've had that discussion before. It's a completely different conversation what we're having here. But The problem is the reporting. We need to know more about this. I've said before, especially in this COVID world, we need to set aside time. There is plenty of time in a 500 lap race to talk about all 37 cars out there, if not multiple times. It is sad to me that for whatever reason, it's got to be in the TV executive side that, okay, they're not selling tickets. Well, you know what? Someone bought sponsorship on that car.
Yes, thank you.
And that is the problem. And I hope it changes.
If you buy sponsorship on a race car, that should be, in my humble opinion, that should be guaranteed eyeballs. Yes. Like, if you are not, that's the thing that really bothers me, is you should, Fox, NBC, they should be showing those guys, because if you want to keep this sport going, you have to show those guys that get one race sponsor deals, because you need to prove to those sponsors, they need to prove to those sponsors that sponsorship was worth it. The money they spent was worth it, which means, instead of spending money on advertising during the program, we spent money advertising on the car, which we thought in theory would receive more airtime, which in theory it should.
Yeah, to their credit, they get on TV. They're just not the main point of the conversation. The leader, Chase Elliott and Martin Truex Jr., are passing the 54 car, but they don't say that. So, yeah, again, to put a pin in this one, to put a nice bow on it, Rob and I are just imploring for more reporting on this, especially during a race. Be great.
I just want to know what happened, because I don't want to sit here and have like speculation information, or basically little to no information, and have it end up shaping, my view, my opinion of a driver, because I don't know the whole story.
And not you.
I want to know the whole story. Fans should be entitled to knowing the whole story. So again, it doesn't taint a driver's career. It doesn't taint a driver's
reputation,
marketability, things like that, because of like unsubstantiated rumors. Like, I don't know if Cody had something wrong with him, but James Davison is saying it, and that's what fans are picking up on. So now Cody is going to have this stigma over him in front of all these fans for so long of being reckless and being mentally unstable because nobody interviewed him and got his side of the story. That's my biggest issue.
Yep. Any points you want to talk about the Cup race? We've kind of talked about that one. It's a big point. It's a great point to talk about and worth the discussion. But is there anything else you wanted to specifically talk about from the Cup race?
I think outside for the Cup race, I think it was another good race.
It's a great race.
I mean, it was another really good race. The Xfinity race was really good. I think we're getting really lucky this year and having good parity. Even we had an opportunity to have a different race winner in Denny Hamlin. His tires fell off. I'm happy about that. It really seemed like we got a good mix of old NASCAR, new NASCAR, and I really liked it. I have really no major criticisms for the race. There was a big one, which was always interesting. Drivers had bad luck here and there, and but overall, I can't really complain. I was very entertained with the race and the racing, especially the last 10 or so laps where, it was a will he, won't they, it was a 3-car battle for the lead, you have Hamlin trying to hold off Truex. Truex is faster, but he's got to get by Hamlin, and then he's got to get by Hamlin fast because here comes Chase. Chase is probably going to make it 3 wide or something at some point. All of a sudden, oh boy, we're throwing the top 3 cars under a blanket with 10 to go at Martinsville, and I'm just thinking, man, who's going to wreck and let Chase go by or something? I thought for the longest time, I said, man, the 11 and the 19 are going to wreck each other, and it's going to be crazy because they're teammates. And then they didn't. And I really thought they were going to wreck. It wasn't going to be on purpose. I really thought it was going to be like an accidental wreck. Like it was going to be a racing incident. Like Hamlin's tires were just going to be too slippy. Yeah, someone was going to wheel hop in there. Someone was going to have 2 slippery tires and get into one another, or someone was going to brake a little later and bump the guy in front and like get him loose or spin him out or something. I really thought that was going to happen. But Hamlin and Truex, man, they respected each other. They drove like teammates. Hamlin really, he said it after the race. He was like, his tires were gone, so there was no way he was going to once Truex got by, he was like, all right, well, I just have to try and get the best finish I can. You know, he kind of just accepted his fate at that point, which I get, but he tried to hold him off for as long as he could, and he did a pretty good job of it, hanging in there on the outside. But they tried to hold off Chase Elliott too, which was equally as difficult. He didn't end up doing that, I don't think. But overall, good race. Had a good time watching it. Excited for Martinsville. It was really weird seeing Martinsville at night for a little while until it went back to being during the day, and it felt a little bit more normal until I was like, Xfinity cars don't really belong here, do they? But I like it, so I'm okay with it. I was like, shouldn't there be a truck race? Oh, that's right. They swapped. Trucks are going to Richmond. Xfinity goes to Martinsville. Trucks go to Bristol. It's all weird now. But, whatever. I still liked it. I still thought it was a good weekend.
Yeah, I thought it was two great races. I love that it wasn't just a processional around the track.
There was lots of passing. There was visibly lots of passing.
And there was lots of contact. There was I love
Hamlin's car at the end of that looked like the best looking car out there.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And everybody behind him just scratches, dirt all over the cars. They've been into another car or into a wall of some kind. It looked good. It was a good classic old fashioned Martinsville race.
Yes. Great race. Contender for race of the year for sure already. Let's move on to the outstanding performance, because there's one thing I want to save here for later or for this segment. So, Rob, who was your outstanding performance this week?
I picked him. I picked Josh Berry because you look at all the results from every race from this weekend, and I can't think of anybody else who deserved it.
I agree with him for sure. I typed it on here. Josh Berry in parentheses in all caps. You can't pick him too, because I made it up and I sent to him. And
I was gonna pick it. I was gonna pick him the moment that checkered flag fell. I was like, I don't care what happens in the Cup race. If Matt DiBenedetto wins the race and dominates, I'm still giving it to Josh Berry, because I can't believe this happened. It felt like such a good underdog story.
Yes.
It felt like such a classic NASCAR story where, you have that. It always felt like, back in the day watching NASCAR, they'd have a storyline going in. They talk about a storyline on the pre-race show, like, oh, this driver is making their debut with this team, but they're really good at the short tracks down here, so expect them to be good. And then they go out and win. And I felt like that was more common in like Truck Series back in the day, but it was still something that was missed. I missed it. Or it felt like a road course ringer coming in. And everybody's like, oh, this guy could probably win the race given his experience here. And then he goes out and finishes second or something. And you're like, well, what did we tell you? This guy had a great race, just like we thought he would. And, and that's what it kind of felt like. It was a really good, not really Cinderella story, but like, it was a heartwarming story. Someone who worked so hard to get to where he was, and Dale Jr. believing in him as much as he did. It's just a really good feeling. It's just overall, and he did it. He won the race in such an impressive fashion. It wasn't like he had a difficult time racing. It wasn't like he had.
It didn't fall in his lap.
No, yeah, he didn't really feel like he fell off. It felt like he was in contention the entire race, and the rest of the field was just his toys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I will say this, though. You mentioned Matt DiBenedetto. I did want to say,
I just mentioned him off the cuff. Yeah, like, I just picked a driver who I was like, if they won, I would give them the outstanding performance easily, because of just them winning would be so surprising to me. But, but I get what you mean.
Yeah, I was just going to say, honorable mention to him and his team. Horrible start to the year. The first four results were 33rd, 37th, 28th, and 16th. Now they've gone and picked up four straight top 15s. The team's trending in the right direction. So good job for him, because they had two incidents that could have ended their day, and they're just grinders out there. It's just who Matt DiBenedetto is. He's a grinder. All right, so that's outstanding performance. On to the upshift, downshift segment here. If you're new, the rules are simple. You upshift, you agree. Downshift, you disagree. Throw it into neutral. You just don't care, or you don't have enough information, or you just can't make up your mind. There's the neutral's kind of the catch-all. It's C, all the above. We just don't know yet. Rob, this is one of our favorite segments here. So let's go ahead and get started. Question number 1, push to pass at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Simply, do you upshift or downshift?
I don't know why this is such a big deal. It's not like we haven't had it in the past. We had the overtake assist for years on ovals. Back, or not years, but like after the unification, because they had the Cosworth power to pass in Champ Car, but they didn't have something like that in IndyCar. And then by around like 2008 or 9, I think it was really more around 2009. They had the push to pass, the overtake assist. And they had that on ovals. They had that at the Indianapolis. It wasn't like an ERS hybrid system, but it was a push to pass. It was an overtake assist. It was essentially a turbo boost. We've had this before. It didn't really change all that much back then. I mean, go back and watch 2011 the Kentucky race IndyCar. Dario Franchitti and Ed Carpenter are literally using their push to passes every single lap. They show it they'll show it on the screen. I've watched this race so many times because it's iconic to me. It is to me like that race, because obviously we don't talk about the Las Vegas race, but that race to me is like the true end of the IRL era. Like that is the true end. Like we are never going to see this style of racing again. We are never going to experience that level of excitement in an IndyCar race ever again, wheel to wheel. So, well, at least I thought about it at that time. I think Texas in 2017 and 16 taught us that that's not always true. And Auto Club of 2015 as well showed us that, we can get back to that if we really wanted to. But they were using their overtakes every single lap, and it was doing almost nothing. Like, it was still all down to momentum, and, like, Ed and Dario were just two outstanding oval drivers. Like, they were outstanding at what they did, especially in an IndyCar. They just knew where to put the car at the right time, and quite honestly, anyone could have won that race. Dario or Ed could have won that race, depending on, if Dario gets a little bit better run up off the corner, if he chooses maybe a little bit tighter line here and there, if that's how close of a margin was. It wasn't down to, Dario's on his last push to pass. Oh, and now Ed's on it. Now Ed's going to get the... No, it wasn't like that. It was still down to good old-fashioned racing. So, ultimately, I don't care. So I'm going to upshift. I really don't care if push to pass comes to IMS or not. It's been there in the past. We've seen it before. I don't really think it affects oval races all that much. It'll probably affect road races a lot more because, you want to get that big push down the straightaway, get a big draft going into the corner to outbrake him. But at a track like Indianapolis, you don't really need the push to pass as much as you would think. As long as you have a draft, you're fine. It might help to get yourself into the toe of another car if you're running outside of the toe, but I don't really think it's going to play much of a huge factor. It might increase passing. I would prefer to see it at Texas. I would prefer to see it there because if what I'm reading about the IndyCar Texas test, it's just going to be another terrible, god-awful race at Texas, which is really unfortunate because, again, I love IndyCar at Texas. That I hate that it's not in June anymore, but I'm fine with what they're doing now. But it would just be a lot more. It would just be a lot better if we had a 24-degree bank to turn 1 and 2 again. That had two distinct grooves and not one groove and one ice patch. I digress. I upshift because I don't think it's going to do anything.
I'm going to throw it into neutral because I kind of agree with you. I don't think it doesn't do a whole lot at Indianapolis. Certainly it does affect the racing on road courses. I'm always one to be skeptical of speed. And I know with the new engine package that's coming out in a few years, we're going to see faster speeds, and that's just one thing I worry about at Indianapolis. So I don't I don't know. I just fear about the safety and the speed. That's my big thing about it. So I'm neutral. I agree with everything that you say there, but I just learn to expect the unexpected.
Speed can be achieved
Without,
safely
yeah,
with low downforce because it forces the drivers to be more careful.
Yeah.
And I think IndyCar is doing the right thing because these cars do have a lot less downforce than their predecessors.
Right.
Like the Aero kits had ridiculous amounts of downforce. The first kit didn't have as much downforce, but it still had a lot of downforce. It didn't have as much downforce as the IR 07 or 5 or 07 did, but the IR 12 still had pretty good amounts of downforce. But usually if you take downforce out on an oval track, you're gonna get a little bit of safer race because guys aren't going to be willing, unless you're Robert Wickens and don't care about taking things too wide into the tunnel turn on lap 1. Hopefully he's learned his lesson from that, and hopefully everybody else has, that if you want to be paralyzed, go ahead and make a crazy dive bomb move in the first into the first turn at a turn that's supposed to be modeled after Indianapolis. Seriously, if you wouldn't make the turn to Indianapolis, why would you if you wouldn't make the pass into turn 1 in Indianapolis, why would you make the pass into turn 2 at Pocono? It doesn't make any sense. You should treat it the same way. You should literally treat that turn the same exact way because it is the same turn.
It is the same turn. It's the same turn.
I'm sorry. I get all upset on that. But seriously, no. Speed can be achieved as long as the drivers are smart about it, which means you take the downforce out. You don't let the drivers be as crazy and reckless. You get a little bit of a safer race. And they can go faster because you don't have as much downforce.
All right. Next question here. Kyle Larson tested wet weather tires at Martinsville Speedway for Goodyear with the intention to learn about racing with damp conditions on a short oval. Do you upshift or downshift the idea of racing wet weather tires on short ovals?
I think with what we saw this weekend, I think it's a good plan for NASCAR to do because I think if we get, a small drizzle or something like that, now obviously not a downpour like we saw on Saturday or on Friday either, but I think it's doable, and I think I applaud NASCAR for trying it because I think that's been a lot of people's complaints is that we're not going all that fast on some short tracks, so maybe we could, because Martinsville, let's look at Martinsville for example. Martinsville, a lot of people have always said, I think Juan Montoya said it best, is he drove Martinsville like a road course, or maybe it was Marcus Ambrose who said this.
I think every single road course driver has said that.
Yeah. So if you can race Martinsville like a road course, I think you should be able to race it in the rain, much like you would a road course, because you're not going as fast. Especially in a situation where if the track is just damp like that, you're only gonna top out at 110 miles an hour, maybe. I
don't know what they're topping out now.
You're gonna go faster than that on the front stretch at Road America, and you can run rain tires.
Yeah, so there the difference is you got a big bunch of runoff and a sand trap there, but yes,
absolutely. But again, you're going at a lower speed, and I just think it's doable, and I applaud NASCAR for doing this. Obviously, we're not going to see this. It's not doable to do it on any oval, probably bigger than Martinsville, or as banked as high as probably Bristol. You're probably going to see this in Martinsville, at Richmond,
New Hampshire.
Probably New Hampshire. New Hampshire wouldn't surprise me. Tracks like that. But even then, if you can get those races in and not have to delay them to the next day, like we've been dealing with the last 2 weeks,
the last 2 years,
multiple years, obviously forever. I mean, NASCAR's had it bad with weather forever. But hey, the Mariners game got canceled because of rain today, so I'm thinking Mother Nature just hates me, or she was doing me a favor because we might get massacred by the Orioles. I don't know. I don't know what to think about the Orioles. It'd be really, really, really embarrassing to get massacred by the Orioles, but it would be something that only the Mariners would do. Am I right?
I haven't watched enough baseball to comment.
Okay. Well, whatever. I do too. So, but yeah, no, I applaud NASCAR for going this route because anytime we can prevent a rain out, I think we should try it.
I agree. I upshift as well. I think it's a good idea. There's certain tracks, certainly, you mentioned the three I definitely would go at, Martinsville, Richmond, and New Hampshire. Obviously, Bristol's too fast, too high banked, wouldn't work. I'd be a little skeptical there, more than a little skeptical. Wouldn't work at Dover. Phoenix is don't really have to worry about rain.
Phoenix is too fast. Phoenix is too fast anyway.
Fast, and especially now you got the transition with the dog leg. I wouldn't. I again, that would just be too fast. So
really, anything. I would argue anything larger than a mile and banked higher than 9 degrees probably shouldn't be used.
Good model there. All right, the Canadian Grand Prix should never have been scheduled so early in the season. Do you upshift or downshift?
This is an interesting question. I thought about it. Here's the thing. I upshift. I'm going to explain this. I upshift. I agree it shouldn't have been scheduled early in the season, but they had to because of contracts and the sort, and also just straight up optimism. You have to be optimistic at the start that you're going to be able to get to Canada. I mean, I don't think anybody sat there at the beginning of the year and said, oh, no, we're probably going to still be in a terrible pandemic. Most of the world's not going to be vaccinated, and we're not going to be able to get to Canada. No, we're all being optimistic. You want to be optimistic in these situations. So I understand why they did it. Obviously, it would have been easier to just cancel it for another year. But I understand the FIA wanting to be optimistic about it and the Canadian government in Montreal wanting to be optimistic about it. It totally makes sense. I don't blame them for it. It's just that, you could probably have seen the writing on the wall before the schedule went out. So you probably didn't need to announce it, but I understand why they did.
I think you said it right there. If there isn't what's the word? I'm blanking on words today. I worked too hard today. Thought too hard. But there's going to be a clause in future contract that says the FIA can call. This isn't a very, very odd situation. We're not going to void your contract, but we're going to make changes on our own. You can like it or not. They should not have scheduled this race this early. I downshift because Canada has clearly been one of the more difficult places during COVID-19 with their dealing with their governments. So I would have tried to back this up to August at the earliest and try to shuffle around some of the European races, kind of moving them up each a slot, if you will, if possible, and called it a day with that, because I think that starting the European tour a little earlier could have helped this.
I don't understand why they didn't just, like you said, just postpone it and run it like they used to do, run Canadian GP, then US GP the next week, and then they could just go Mexico right after, and then Brazil.
I would have thought that would have been a great move. Well, they tried to avoid triple headers.
Well, I understand. You don't have to do it all week after week after week, but you can stay abroad for a while and stay quarantined and not be traveling a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like you could do it better by just having everything in one region, get all those American races out of the way, and then fly back to Europe.
That's what I would have done. And I get the optimism part. We need to stay optimistic, but I also, to a fault, am too much of a realist. And I say, look, this was a bad idea from the get-go. And I think right now, what IMSA, what F1, and what IndyCar are seeing is that we didn't think about that. We didn't have enough realism in this in our thought process. So now they're paying for it. And if you ask me, Toronto isn't going to happen this year in IndyCar. It's not. They're going to have a doubleheader at Mid-Ohio, most likely, is what's going to happen.
Go to Michigan, cowards.
They're not going to go to Michigan, but I like your optimism.
I'm calling them cowards to get inside their heads and be what you too scared to race at Michigan? Oh, you just no big deal. It's just like your granddaddies and everybody else always ran at Michigan. It's not like it's home to the best races, best IndyCar races of all time. It's not like it's one of the most prestigious racetracks to race at, next to Indianapolis on the IndyCar schedule, next to Long Beach too. It's not. It's nothing. It's just a very important track that needs IndyCar to go to it again. It's no big deal. You don't need to go there. Nah, who needs big, fast oval tracks with fans that really love IndyCar and probably don't want to go to the freaking Detroit again? Because would you want to go to Detroit if you had the option to go see a race in the middle of nowhere, Michigan, or Detroit? Where would you take?
Honestly, I like both. I like the picturesque of Detroit, and I like Michigan. Sorry,
I would take. I would take.
I know you take Michigan. I know you take Michigan.
I just don't like the Belle Isle course. I'm sorry. I don't like it. I think it's boring. I don't think it's a very good racetrack. I think they should put their money in going into Michigan instead. I don't care how. If I am the only person in the stands at Michigan, that is, quite honestly, I don't care. They should just be racing there, even if I'm the only person who shows up. And that's the most selfish thing I'll ever say on this show for right now. I'll probably say something way more selfish and way more like close-minded later, but this is opinion time.
Last question here, Rob. We probably need to make this a little bit quicker, but unfortunately, this is a big question. Marcus Smith shared on the Dale Jr. download that he hasn't forgotten about or given up on North Wilkesboro Speedway. Do you upshift or downshift that Speedway Motorsports should consider converting North Wilkesboro back to a dirt track?
I'm neutral on this because it really and truthfully, it doesn't depend on anything other than NASCAR's decision on whether or not they want dirt to become a permanent part of the schedule. If NASCAR looks at Bristol Dirt and says that was a success, and if they come back next year and they do it again, they say that was another success, and they will go to the Truck Series on Knoxville, and maybe they add another dirt track to the Truck Series schedule. If that is maybe they put the Xfinity cars on dirt, later. If that is the push NASCAR is going to do, then yes, they should turn it into a dirt track. Because at that point, then you have made it exactly what you are trying to accomplish, and you have made it unique again, and it would potentially save tons and tons of costs in the long run for things. I would imagine not having to repave it as much. Maybe track preparation would cost more, but I don't know. I don't run a racetrack. I don't know how much it costs to do these things. In my opinion, but if NASCAR is saying, oh no, we just want kind of dirt to be a special kind of thing, like we race 1 or 2 a year and it's kind of a big special deal, but we're not looking at like expanding the schedule to include more dirt tracks, then no, then they should repave it instead. That's why I'm neutral. It really depends on what NASCAR's decision on dirt is. If NASCAR decides dirt is the future, then North Wilkesboro should be dirt again. If NASCAR decides dirt is just going to be a special thing that we're going to go to once or twice a year, then they should pave it, because for the sake of allowing other short track races, like ARCA to race there, like the CRA Super Series, like late model divisions, to kind of help boost the economy of the area. I'm sure you could run sprint cars on there as well, but I mean, I think you would probably get more people down there, Wilkes County, to go out to a late model race than a sprint car race, if that makes sense. Not saying it couldn't happen, but I'm just look at your demographic. If you want to go to a sprint car race, you go up here to Indianapolis. You want to go to a late model race, it would probably go down to your neck of the woods, right, in Charlotte. So ultimately, that's where I stand on that. It's all up to what NASCAR's future for dirt holds, and then that is what they should do to North Wilkesboro.
I'm going first off. I'm stuck between neutral and upshift because I don't downshift the idea entirely. It once was dirt. I don't have a problem with it being converted back to dirt if it saves the facility. If they decide to reopen the facility as a paved track, be interested to see what they get there. But I do think NASCAR doesn't, in Bristol and Speedway Motorsports, doesn't put this much effort into Bristol dirt as they did for 2 years at least. If there isn't a push to say, you know what, let's create this once a year deal. I think the Truck Series was going to have 3 dirt races. They were going to have 23 races until Tony Stewart ripped up the Eldora contract. All right. That was going to be the case. It was going to be there in mid-July or late July, and it was going to be between Iowa and Watkins Glen. There was going to be a dirt race there at Eldora. Only reason that there's not going to be 23 races here is because of that. So, but to be special in the Cup Series, you got to do just once. And I don't think talk about going back to your roots, right? And I think that's a great, if NASCAR says, yeah, we want to do this, Speedway Motorsports, we want you to be the person to do it. And this might be the thing that gets you the 37th race on the calendar come the new TV contract, just to save dirt, just so you don't lose I'm sorry to throw the name out there. You don't lose New Hampshire. You don't lose a race at both paved races at Bristol. You won't lose both.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to see more races get. I mean, I understand why we have the limit, but like back in the day, the limit didn't exist. If another track wanted a race, it just got a race. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously Wilkesboro was a different story. That was a totally different story on its own. But like, I'm thinking about like when they started going to Kansas and when they started going to Chicagoland and stuff like that, it was just like, oh, we're just gonna build these brand new racetracks, and are we gonna get a? And there was like at the time there was like no guarantee we're gonna get a major cup race.
They built those tracks. They had the date when they reworked the TV contract. They had those 2 extra races built in. They say, yeah, we're gonna have a race for our tracks.
Well, but like Kentucky, Nashville, other tracks like that.
Yeah, they weren't owned by NASCAR though. And no Dover, whatever. That wasn't NASCAR. NASCAR, it's kind of like the
right. So what I'm saying is even with SMI, if you're working hand in hand with NASCAR, I don't get why you need to take races away from other tracks if you could just
I agree.
Add it in at the end.
My point I'm trying to make was that this could be the thing, that this is going to be a multi-year deal. This isn't going to happen in North Wilkesboro, I don't think, for 3 or 4 years at the minimum. And that's just complete speculation. But what that does is that opens up the window of conversation for the TV contracts, which are probably starting to begin the discussion between NASCAR and whoever those TV partners are going to be, the broadcast partners are going to be, and saying, look,
probably CBS and NBC.
If we get this new contract out, Marcus Smith, Superspeedway Motorsports, if you get North Wilkesboro turned into a dirt track, we will give you a 37th race. Here's the contract for that. Or we'll create a 37th race for you in the Cup Series. Here's the contract. I see that as a possibility, and maybe the only reason they convert it back to dirt is if there is actually a guarantee that doesn't sacrifice the date of a current existing Speedway Motorsports track, because I think that's kind of the concern that we talk about Nashville. I think what's going to end up happening there, Texas is just going to have one date. Atlanta's going to get the All-Star race, and the second date at Atlanta is going to go to the Nashville Fairgrounds. That is I kind of really do believe that is what's going to happen, is that Texas is just going to have the one Cup date, Atlanta's going to have the All-Star, and Nashville's going to have the second Atlanta date. That preserves New Hampshire. And then on top of that, the only reason they didn't go to Kentucky per Marcus Smith, and this, again, I've only met the guy one time, and I sat next to him. I didn't even talk to him. I just met the guy. Hi, I'm Josh. Oh, I'm Marcus. Nice to meet you. I know who you are. But anyways, my point is, he said that Kentucky, the only reason they didn't go to Kentucky is that they didn't have any government guarantees this year that they could go there and have fans. So that's why they shifted it to Atlanta. My guess is that there's more deeper reasons than that. Again, just a guess. But we don't need to be losing any more races. And I think the one that everyone has circled is New Hampshire. That's an important market. Getting up the Northeast, it's a modified track. Watkins Glen, New Hampshire kind of carry that banner for the Cup Series, for the Xfinity Series, for the Truck Series. We need to continue going up there. So I wouldn't want to see that track go away to get North Wilkesboro dirt. I know that's crazy. Or get North Wilkesboro in general. I know that might be even crazier to say, but that's an important track. I think it's a fun race when you have the right package, just like with anything else. So that's why I say I'm on this whole thing. Should North Wilkesboro be converted to dirt? I'm upshifting and neutraling at the same time, because like you, there are caveats or things I want to see happen, or for a particular reason for it to become a reality. So, any last words on that before we move on, Rob?
I think you kind of nailed it. I think we kind of nailed our feelings about it pretty well. I really feel strongly about that. So, yeah, I'm with you on a lot of that, and I kind of come to an agreement here on where we're standing. So it's not bad that we agree. Again, if you disagree with us, tweet us. #RobinRoller. Seriously, I still have it pulled up on TweetDeck. I'll check it right now. You guys aren't tweeting us.
And I'll post.
Disagree with me. I say a bunch of stupid crap on this show all the time. Disagree with me.
And we post the questions too, so you feel free to play along there too, and say, hey, this is what I feel, and then come back and comment again, like, wow, Josh, you were dumb. You didn't answer that question right at all. I think we should move on here, because we technically have 10 minutes left, but we're probably going to go a little bit over the 2-hour mark, unfortunately. So, featured segments back in my hands this week, and I'm excited for it, because I teased a few weeks ago that about 6 episodes ago that I'd be debuting something a little different this year. And folks, that day has come. We're going to debut today. Traditionally, when I've held the command of this segment, I've featured a racetrack, active or defunct. Only once have I veered away from that, and that was with Ryan Newman last year. The 12-pack moments I did in February, that week after his crash, that scary crash, when we all felt our hearts skip a beat there. But without any further hold-up, I'm going to debut Rollers Featured Race. Just dropping track off. Rollers Featured Race. So today I feature the 2001 Pepsi 300 presented by Mapco Williams at Nashville Superspeedway in the NASCAR Busch Series. Why that race and now? Well, from 2001 to 2011, the NASCAR Busch Series, later Nationwide Series, and now currently the Xfinity Series, raced at Nashville Superspeedway on Holy Saturday, the day before Easter. Now, that was a little over a week ago, but I wanted to still keep it kind of date relevant to this segment for at least a debut. So the 2001 Pepsi 300 was contested actually on April 14th, 2001, so that's still even a little more relevant. It was the inaugural Busch Series race at Nashville Superspeedway, and what was the first of 21 races ran at Nashville Superspeedway in the Busch Series from 2001 to 2011. So they would run there twice from 2002 to 2011. It was broadcast on FX. Oh, man, I loved hearing that. Well, and Steve Burns was the play-by-play. Larry McReynolds and Darrell Waltrip were the color analysts. Jeff Hammond and Matt Yoakum were the pit reporters. Man, this was a great combination. The stands were
only two pit reporters, though. That's interesting to me.
Yeah. And the stands were full. I love seeing the full stands at Nashville. It showed, and even though there wasn't too many, I mean, Harvick wasn't supposed to be a Cup regular that year, all right? Right. We all know the reasons why he became one. But there really weren't any big-name Cup guys. Bobby Hamilton was in the race. I'll get to that in a little minute, but he wasn't big-name NASCAR Cup at the time. You didn't have, Jeff Gordon in this race. Dan Dale Earnhardt Jr. You didn't have Tony Stewart. So it was great to see a race where, there was Cup guys, but they weren't big names, and they drew a full crowd. I mean, if it wasn't sold out, it was darn near sold out. So I wanted to watch the whole race on YouTube, but unfortunately, the only posting of this race is with 140 laps to go of the 225 laps. So there's a couple cautions, a number of cautions before that, that did occur, and one of them, the notable one, Rob, you talked about her a couple weeks ago. Shauna Robinson was in Michael Waltrip's number 99 Aaron Chevrolet. She tangled with AJ Frank driving the number 49 for Jay Robinson. No relation. Shauna was unable to continue and was credited with a last place 43rd. And Frank ended up finishing 38th. A couple notable points here I looked at. Loose cars in the corners. I love seeing it. Car got loose, got in. Oh, arrow loose off. Or he got loose into the corner and exiting. It was great to see that. Cars could follow. You could follow a car. All right? And not have any problem with, oh, crap, I don't have any air on my nose. I'm going to lose. I can't follow this guy. Yet, I saw that lap after lap. When they stayed on 1 or 2 cars, 3 cars even, they were able to stay in line, wait to that moment of attack. The noses of the cars are off the ground, plenty of clearance, and full throttles down the straight. I loved it. I love what Rob, you know me, I love to see the nose off the ground of the car. Martinsville, except, this past weekend, except, at Kansas, at Chicagoland, at Kentucky, wherever. With about 100 laps to go, this is cool. Matt Yoakum reported that Greg Biffle's crew chief told him to, quote, switch to the B-Box. Now, this had a different rev chip in it with about 300 more RPM, and he was instructed to get used to it in case of a late race shootout. Larry McReynolds explained that the Busch cars had 2 ignition switches, which led to separate rev limiter boxes. The chips inside will start, quote, turning off cylinders if RPMs start going too high. So that's why you have that rev limiter. You switch off 1, switch off 2. But I don't think he ever had to use it maybe in the race, maybe later in the race when he was racing Jason Keller, but there was no late race shootout. With about 70 laps to go, David Green, now this is nostalgia. David Green took off from his pit box but stalled, and a crewman ran towards the car, middle of a green flag pit stops, in the middle of pit row, or the main drag there, all right? He is jumping on the car. He's trying to get into the cowl opening, and he's trying to dump ether in, all right, to try to get the car to ignite and get it cranking and going into the carburetor. But to no avail, they eventually the rest of the crew came out and pushed his car back behind the wall. Like, we're at the end of pit road, like way beyond where his pit box was. Today, that's a caution. We got a car stalled on pit road. All right. With about 55 laps remaining, Bobby Hamilton Jr. Had only had fourth gear left in his car. How difficult could that have been? I mean, that's crazy to think about. Greg Biffle, as I mentioned him earlier, he ended up dominating the race, leading 5 times for a total of 133 laps to 225. Fending off second-place finisher Jason Keller, who's in the 57 Ford for PPC Racing. Scott Wimmer was third in the number 23 Pontiac for Bill Davis, which was interesting because, Davis ran Dodges in the Cup Series, but there were no Dodges in the Busch Series at all in 2001. It would be until 2002 that they re-entered the Busch Series. But he always ran Chevrolets too. He started running Chevrolets in 2003. He never ran Dodges there. It's very interesting. That can't happen today. Randy LaJoie was in the number 7 for Evans Motorsports. He finished 4th, and Elton Sawyer he finished 5th in the number 98 for Atkins Motorsports, which was reported by Jeff Hammond was powered by a Cosworth engine. And we all know we are more familiar with Cosworth with open wheel racing than NASCAR. But yep, it was built, and he was supplied with Cosworth engines all year long. It was Biffle's first career Busch Series win, his first of 5 victories in 2001, where he did win Rookie of the Year. Mike Skinner finished 6th in the number 21 for RCR. It was the second race out for Mike Dillon, who hoped to return eventually, but he never did after suffering injuries at Bristol earlier, or just a few weeks prior to that. Eventual 2001 champion, mentioned him just a second ago. Kevin Harvick finished 7th. This race was Frank Kimmel's first and only career start in the Busch Series. He was even referred to as 2-time ARCA champion. How odd that was to hear. Because we obviously know he went on to win 8 more. He's a 10-time ARCA Menard Series champion. He finished 11th and then number 8 for Highline Performance Group, which was owned by Armando Fitz. Fitz purchased the team's assets from Team Sabco before the beginning of the 2001 season, which was owned by Felix Sabates, Fitz's father-in-law. Now, this team eventually became Fitz Bradshaw Racing in its lineage that followed. Bobby Hamilton finished 20th in what was his only start in the number 1 yellow freight Chevrolet for James Finch in 2001. He ran out of gas while under green with about 80 laps to go. He sped on pit road, and something we don't see happened. Instead of a pass-through, NASCAR official went over the wall and held his hand out. All right? The crew pitted the car, but when the crew was done and had finished touching the car, he went on a 15-second clock. Was held for 15 seconds. That was a penalty back then. And when he was done, just like in the EA Sports video games from back in the day, the official waved him on, and he took off as soon as that hand went down because it was its signal to go. Something you also saw in that pit stop as well, the crew, 8 of them went over the wall to service the car. 5 go over the wall today. So you had 2 tire changers, a jackman, 2 tire carriers, a crewman to clean the windshield and service the driver, water bottle, ice pack, whatever, a gas man, and a catch man. And also, the crewman and the official, no helmets. No helmets at all. Just a headset, maybe a ball cap, and a pair of sunglasses. That's what they wore. All right? Something definitely you don't see that today. And even on one pit stop later I saw in the race, a crewman was wearing slacks and a polo.
Oh, that's my gosh.
I mean, that's a huge no-no today. Next point here, Stedman Marlin, son of Sterling Marlin and grandson of Cuckoo Marlin, finished 22nd after being involved in an accident where he got into Clay Rogers, who was driving the 17 Visine Chevrolet. It was the first race for Marlin in the number 95 for Sadler Brothers Racing that season. I think he drove 9 races that year for them. The last time he raced on the national level, though, was 2006 in the Busch Series at Daytona in July. Eventual 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion Jimmy Johnson finished 28th in the number 92 for Herzog Chevrolet, a Herzog Chevrolet, I should say. He did run inside the top 10, but he crashed on lap 2 or 3 when Chad Little cut him off, and they crashed into the wall and collected Bobby Hamilton Jr., which effectively ended Hamilton Jr.'s horrendous day. I mean, gosh, he was slow on the restarts. I mean, you only have 4th gear. You're a sitting duck out there. And you have to stay in line. You can't, pull off to the side, too. It really was a bummer. And then last note here, it was David Donahue's first race in the number 25 for Team Renzi Chevrolet, owned by Ed Renzi, former president of McDonald's, I believe, was his role there. He replaced Chad Chaffin, who raced in the first 7 races of the season, and then Donahue was eventually let go after 11 races following the race of Chicagoland, the inaugural race of Chicagoland. So his career in the 25 was bookended by inaugural races, one might say, but he didn't really make, unfortunately, a good impression to stay. So that was, and I kept it under 10 minutes miraculously, the first ever Rollers featured race. We'll have more of these to come down the way. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. A little different from a featured race track. But I don't know when the next one will be. Haven't decided yet. I know a couple of them, but I don't know. I don't think that's the next one down the line. So I know Rob's going to have some stuff coming up in May for us. So we have those to look forward to. Rob, anything you want us to add?
I do not have a lot to add right now. I am pretty good on that. I thought that was a really fun way to end the show today. I enjoyed listening to a story about another race. I really like that because it's a lot like how I do the featured 500. So, but this was with any old race, and that's what I like about it. So, good job.
Oh, thank you. Glad you liked it. All right, so what's in the windshield here as we wind down? NASCAR is racing in Richmond, Virginia this weekend with the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series racing on Saturday, April 17th at the Cup Series, on Sunday, April 18th. Not sure how I feel about day races at Richmond. We'll see how they go. We'll see. Formula E will race in 2 weeks in Spain at Circuit Ricardo Tormo on April 24th and 25th, which will be another kind of unique race. It'll be the first time they race on a permanent circuit. You know, they first had their first rolling start race, but this time they'll round the race for the first time on a permanent circuit. Extreme E Racing, Rob, you didn't know when they race next time? I can tell you. They race in Senegal, not at Senegal. They race in Senegal for the Ocean X Prix on May 29th and 30th. So that's the weekend. That's Memorial Day weekend.
Man, that's a long ways to wait. Some of these racing series really got to do a better job of not making fans wait so long to the next race. I mean, I understand like a week, 2 weeks, but when you're asking for a month or more, man, you're just being mean.
We have 5 races, man. They only have 5 races.
I know. That's fine, but I just, you get all excited about one race and then it finishes and you're like, oh man, when's the next one? Oh, it's in a month or 2. Great.
Oh, by the way, I knew what I was going to say. I totally forgot this point. I know I'm blipping it in here, but talk about, waiting for races. NASCAR, develop an app with former races, with an archive of races. I could have gone Dropbox series, NASCAR Xfinity series, year 2001 race, Pepsi 300 at Nashville Superspeedway, and I would have watched the whole race. I will pay money to have that.
What they need is, if you ever use like Pluto TV or something, I don't know if you ever use that, but what they really need is something like that. They have they have the NFL channel and the MLB channel, and they air old games from the NFL, like classic NFL games.
It's not a game I want to watch.
No, I know. I respect that. But I still want this. I still want like a 24/7 like free digital channel that just airs nothing but classic NASCAR races, and you can just turn it on at any given time and just have a race going. Because that's what most people do with YouTube. They just pick a random race and just turn it on and then make a playlist or something. Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. I have a Indy 500 playlist. That's just for me. I don't really have. There's a lot of other people who do NASCAR playlists that are really helpful. So I usually like to try and find those. But yeah, no, that's what they need. They need a nice digital streaming channel that's just 24/7 old races, or do something like what the WWE Network did, which was just archive all of their content and put it out there on one service. It's probably easy. Well, actually, let's be honest. Well, no, actually, let's be honest. It will probably take about the same amount of work to get all NASCAR races on there as it took to get every Raw, SmackDown, WCW, Monday Night Nitro, everything. They got everything on that, and it took a long time. I got to imagine if every single episodic episode plus pay-per-views can be put on one network, I think NASCAR can do it with races.
Oh yeah. All right, so we interrupted watching the wheelchair there, but as I said, the next Extreme E-Racing takes place in Senegal for the Ocean X Prix on May 29th and 30th. Formula One returns this weekend on Sunday, the 18th, which is the first of two scheduled trips to Italy for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix in Imola. So that's going to be a fun race.
You even wrote it out here, and you still mispronounced it.
I know.
You know what? It's okay, because when I read that, up until you said it, I was still pronouncing it Emilio Romagna.
Yeah.
So it's
I still butchered it. Yeah. Too bad this
San Marino.
Live.
Whatever.
Too bad this isn't live. I know. Why isn't the San Marino?
WTF1 put out an article on today, I thought.
Did
they had like a little blog about why it's not called the San Marino. It's just, and people were making the good point where it's, Imola is not anywhere near San Marino. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know. It'd be like having the Long Beach Grand Prix and calling it, the Las Vegas Grand Prix or something. It wouldn't make sense.
Who wrote that again?
Huh?
Who wrote this blog?
It was from WTF1.
Okay.
If you follow, do you follow them? They're hilarious, obviously.
Yeah,
they're hilarious.
Yeah,
they're a bit problematic to some, but in my opinion, they're hilarious.
They can be hilarious and problematic at the same time. It's a good balance. All right, and the last point here, but maybe the most important one, saving it for the last, American Open Wheel Racing returns with the 2021 NTT IndyCar Series season opener at Barber Motorsports Park. Rob has got his hands up in the air. He's cheering. He's celebrating. He's got everything but champagne spraying out here.
Watched WrestleMania last night. I'm doing a Daniel Bryant yes chant. No one can see right now, but that's what I'm doing.
All right, that's what he's doing. He described it to you. So if you know what he's talking about, you know what he's doing. If outside of me not watch this, I wouldn't know what he's doing. But we'll see Scott Dixon start his quest for his 7th title in the debut of Jimmy Johnson and Roman Grosjean in IndyCar. That race is also on Sunday the 18th. A lot to talk about next week. We're excited about it. We're going to definitely try to keep the time next week for sure.
Are we? We didn't even try this. I mean, we said we were going to try, but then we just gave up halfway through.
Yeah, we're going to try. I'm going to do it. I need to become a little more harsh with the time here. So, as we click off to 2 hours, 6 minutes, and 20 seconds, thanks for listening. Let us know how we're doing. We appreciate all you listening. You're new or returning. However you're listening to this podcast, whether it be on Spotify, Apple, Google, or whatever podcast service you're using, or also YouTube. However, let us know what you think. Comments on our posts. Bring them on. Follow us. So on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, it's at Robin Roller. Just as it sounds, Robin on Twitter. You can find him and I there very easily. Rob is at RPEETERS33. I am at roller_01. That's ROLLER_01. Both those again. That's on Twitter there. All right. That's the end of the show here. Remember to wear your mask, social distance, follow the proper protocols, help things get along here. We can return to normal as soon as possible. And stay safe out there. So for Rob Peeters, I'm Josh Roller, and this was the Racing with Robin Roller podcast. Have a great weekend.